And now, here's your man of the half hour, Skippy Lowe.
Jeffers, North Carolina?
Yes,
Born there?
a Tar Heel born
Really?
and a Tar Heel bred.
You still have that accent, don't you?
Oh yes, you hear it.
But you didn't spend much time. You got out of there when you were a very young girl.
Well, actually, I went through the 4th grade of school,
Uh-huh.
and then I went back and forth between New York and North Carolina. My
Ah.
mother was a teacher,
Uh-huh.
and she would come back at times and teach in North Carolina, so
Your mother had a lot to do with your career.
everything to do with it, everything.
You're saying everything.
Yeah. I didn't have the drive, I didn't have the ambition. I had an inferiority complex that my mother didn't have for me.
Uh-huh.
So I really was just like a puppet for her.
Uh-huh.
I would never have done anything, accomplished anything if she
Really?
hadn't been behind me all the way. Yes.
Uh-huh. Powers Maurer.
Powers model, yes.
Really?
At 15 to subsidize my musical studies in New York City.
Mm-hmm. Opera? You were studying?
Well, I was studying opera there, yes, and I was singing at the Manhattan Opera House.
Uh-huh.
Manhattan Opera Company, which was in Carnegie Hall.
Right.
And
Who did you study with?
his name was Marchese, Maestro Marchese.
Uh-huh. Hard work, though, isn't it? Learning all those languages. How many languages did you have to learn?
Well, I sang mostly in Italian, some in French. I did the Italian operas. The first one I ever did was Pagliacci. I did Netta and Pagliacci.
My favorite.
And then I was working on Bohème
Uh-huh.
and Madame Butterfly.
Uh-huh.
And later on, I did Tosca, became my #1 role because my voice dropped a little. When I was very
Right.
young, I was a coloratura.
Uh-huh.
And I found in Madame Butterfly, singing 6 sustained high
Uh-huh.
C's in a row was
Uh-huh.
very taxing.
Something happened in Brooklyn. I think you were doing the opera in Brooklyn or something like that? Or what
Yeah, well,
happened?
that was many years later.
Really?
Yes, I had been on a contract to Metro and
Oh, this is before.
RKO and Republic,
Uh-huh.
and I was on the contract to RKO when, as a matter of fact, I was studying with a man named Mebane Beasley, who was my voice coach for years and years in
Right.
California.
Mhm.
And I was working on Tosca, and while we were singing, the door burst open, and in walked this gentleman in a white suit and this long black hair and a white fedora and a black cane. And he walked in and he says, "You must sing a Tosca for me in Brooklyn." And I looked at him, I thought, the man's crazy.
Uh-huh.
And I realized he had to be of some person. He wouldn't be dressed like that in the first place. He wouldn't dare.
Uh-huh.
So his name was Maestro Alfredo Salmaggi, who ran the Brooklyn Opera House.
Uh-huh.
And so when he left, my teacher said, "Well, why don't you do it?" I had done it here. I did
Uh-huh.
with the American Opera Company here in Los
Right,
Angeles.
right.
And he said, "Well, why don't you come back and do Tosca for me in Brooklyn?" And
Uh-huh.
I said, "Well, let's talk about it." And we did. We got permission from RKO. They didn't even know I sang opera there. I just sang little diddly bump things. And Peter in Rathven was head of the studio. And he had said, "You sing opera?" And I said, "Oh, yes, I've been working on opera for years and years." So he said, "You have my blessings. Go and do it. Spend 2 weeks in New York,
Uh-huh.
do publicity for RKO, and do your opera." So I sang the first performance I did, which is kind of a funny little story about it, if I may tell
Yeah,
you.
please do.
We rehearsed in the afternoon, and the tenor I was singing with, who later became a very, very well-known tenor, I won't mention
Uh-huh.
his name, he was very short and rather slight.
Uh-huh.
And he did the whole afternoon rehearsal with a scarf, as a lot of opera singers do, wrapped around his face this way. And he didn't sing a note, but he had the scarf around his face. So after the rehearsal was over and came back, and I went to my dressing ready for the performance, Tosca makes her entrance coming into an abbey, and her tenor is waiting there for her, and she comes on, "Mario, Mario, Mario," and he says, "Son qui," and she does this beautiful sweeping entrance into the opera.
Uh-huh.
So came my musical cue, and I came, "Mario, Mario, Mario," and I heard the "Son qui," and I came beautifully on, and I looked, and I said, "Who the Sam Hill are you?" It was an entirely different tenor. He was fat and he was cross-eyed, and I had never seen him rehearse with him before. My other tenor apparently had been taken ill.
Uh-huh.
So that was quite an experience. But backstage, the opera was such
funny.
a success
Uh-huh.
that they asked me, big headlines in the New York the news in the Mirror would say,
Right.
"Hollywood starlet does opera," and they had,
Right.
very provocative pictures of me on the cover. And they asked me would I do an extra special matinee. They were going to put on a matinee because everything was booked. So my music teacher said, Mr. Beasley said, "Why not stay and do one more?" So when I did the matinee, after the matinee, this little man, very short little man with tufts of hair here and kind of buck teeth and eyeglasses, and a taller gentleman with gray hair and glasses that came backstage, and they said, we have a question. I am Kurt Weill, and this is Maurice Bravenel, and we have a musical show we would like for you to consider doing. And I said, oh, no, 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 I have to go right back to Hollywood. You know, I'm under contract. And they said, we would like to talk to you about it. And of course, out of deference to Kurt Weill, how could I say no? He said, would you please come just and listen to my music? Right. So we made an appointment, and we went to Dwight Deer's office up above the Adelphi Theater, and it was a little old rickety piano. And Kurt Weill sat down at this little piano in this sort of dingy office, and all the din of New York coming through the windows.
Love it.
And he started playing this music and singing in his squeaky little voice. I have never been so enthralled by anything in my life. I said, oh, I have to do it. I have to do it. And I got right on the phone. It was Kurt Weill's Street Scene.
Street Scene.
The Elmer Rice Pulitzer Prize play.
Wonderful.
I got right on the phone. I called Mr. Rathman. I said, Mr. Rathman, I have found a musical written by Kurt Weill, the Elmer Rice play. And I would just give anything to be able to do it. Will you hear me out? And he said, well, fly back to California and we'll talk about it. So I did, and he gave me permission. I took a 6-month suspension from RKO.
And the critics gave it such,
Oh,
you got
yes.
such critical.
Oh, yes. Critical acclaim. it
Critical
was.
acclaim.
Mhm.
Once won it. Sinatra, Frank Sinatra, Step Lively.
Yes.
Tell me about Frank Sinatra and Step Lively. This was at what studio?
RKO.
RKO?
They bought my contract from Republic Studios to do that film.
Really?
Yes.
Tell me about Frank Sinatra at RKO.
Well, in those days,
Yeah, go ahead.
he was, I found out now he was much older than I didn't realize it, but he was a short, energetic, flashing blue eyes and a flashing smile, and very, very appealing. I didn't quite understand what all the hoorah was about with his screaming and tearing his clothes off and things. I was just assigned to do a picture with him.
But this wasn't his first. Higher
No.
and Higher was his first with Barbara Hale. I remember that. But Step Lively was later in his career?
I don't think, I'm not sure.
Oh, okay.
I'm not sure.
Who's in the film with you?
Adolphe Menjou. It was a remake of Hotel.
Right.
Let's see, oh gosh.
It was a good movie.
Eugene Paulette, Gloria DeHaven played the love interest. I played the vamp. Oh, so many, many stars were in it.
I love that movie. I thought it was a great movie.
Did you really?
Yeah, I loved it. I thought it
Do you
was
remember the scene in the phone booth, the number I did with him? I
Yes,
chase him as the vamp. I chase him throughout the film, and I finally get him cornered in a telephone booth. And we did this number in the phone booth, was written by Sammy Cahn. So we spent 2 weeks in a phone booth together. We couldn't do that today. Not enough room
Republic
there.
Studios. How long were you with them?
About a year and a half.
What did you do with them? You did a lot.
Yes, I did.
A lot of work
I
with
played a lot of dumb blondes, gangster malls, and I went to the head of the studio and I said, can't I play a nice, simple girl? And they said, well, the only parts like that are in Westerns. And I said, well, let me do a Western. They said, you're kidding, you want to do a Western? I said, yes, very much so.
Right.
But they signed me to a series with Gabby Hayes and Wild Bill Elliott.
Elliott, that's
I
right.
was stuck with 8 of them.
Really?
Yes. But it was a wonderful learning experience for me. This was as I went from Metro doing I Married an Angel with Jeanette MacDonald and Nelson Eddy.
That's what I want to get back, yeah.
Yes, and went to Republic. It was really a learning experience for me.
Jeanette MacDonald, Nelson
Oh,
Eddy.
yes. Oh, I loved Nelson. I still do. He was my hero.
Was he?
Yes, my grandmother took me to see all his films, all the Jeanette MacDonald, Nelson Eddy films, and she was my idol and he was my hero. I was so in love with him. As a matter of fact, when he got married, I was 13 years old and I was in Hendersonville, North Carolina, visiting with my sister who lived there. And when I heard it on the air, I climbed up an apple tree in the orchard, out in the apple orchard, and cried all afternoon because he didn't wait for me to grow up. I told him that many years later.
Did you really?
But he was wonderful, wonderful to work with.
On the set with Jeanette MacDonald, I mean, come on, it must have been a thrill for Anne Jeffries.
Why, yes.
I mean,
and Jeanette, wore all these big wigs and things. It was a costume thing called I Married an Angel, and she would retire to her dressing room immediately after the scenes. And whereas Nelson would stay around and he would sing the Mikado or some Gilbert and Sullivan opera and tap dance and tell stories and jokes. He was so different from what he came off on the screen. He wasn't stoic at all. He was very warm, very
Was he?
charming, a wonderful sense of humor.
Uh-huh.
And one of the biggest thrills I got on the picture was we filmed for 3 months.
Right.
And towards the end of the shoot, he came to me. I was sitting in a makeup chair in a very elaborate costume,
Right.
getting my makeup checked. And he came to me and he stood behind the chair. He said, Cameron, would you come over here and take a picture with me with a quiet one, which is the last time anyone ever calls me a quiet one.
Uh-huh.
And he had, at the end of the picture, he presented that photograph, autographed, saying to Anne Jeffries from her adoring slave, Nelson Eddy.
Adoring.
Oh,
I loved it.
that just melted me completely.
Topper. I mean, that, you know, that is the most adorable
Yes,
show. I
A
love
good series,
series.
wasn't it?
One of the best
Yeah,
ever on television.
yeah. Thank
Anne
you.
Jeffries.
Thank you.
I mean, Topper. The world loves Topper. Tell me about, how did you get that role?
Well, Robert and I, I'm married to Robert Sterling.
Sterling.
Yes.
That's right. We're going to get to that.
And we were playing, we had a nightclub act, and we were playing the Sands in Las Vegas. And I got a call from my agent. He said, I've got an offer here for you and Robert to do George and Marion Kirby on a new television series called Topper, a make of the Topper films.
Right.
And I had also been a big fan of the Topper films.
Right.
And I said, oh, yes, 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 will do. So they sent us a script. We loved it. And we finished our engagement there, and we came here to Los Angeles to play at the Coconut Grove. And while we were playing the Grove, we filmed the pilot during the day.
Right.
We went to San Francisco to the Fairmont Hotel where we were playing, and they
Right.
called us and said, cancel your tour, it's sold immediately. Some sort of a record for the selling of a...
So you were doing your club appearances
Yes.
all through, you and Robert Sterling,
Yes.
and this happened while
Yes,
you were doing all your
yes,
club
and-
appearances.
Weren't we lucky?
You were working many clubs at that time.
Yes.
How did you meet your husband, Robert Sterling? Come on.
Well, actually, I met him on Broadway.
You did?
I had never met him in California at all.
Uh-huh.
He was a friend of the publicity man from RKO, John Springer. Do you know John?
Of course I know John very
Well,
well.
John introduced us, and we met, and I was very involved with another gentleman at the time that we met, so it never occurred to me. And first of all, a good-looking actor, you know, wow, get away from that. But my mother fell in love with him. She said, now, this is the man you should marry.
Your mother
My mother.
Here she comes back
Oh,
into your life
oh,
again.
Always, always,
helping you again.
always.
Ah.
And so a year later, we re-met again on Broadway. He came in with Gramercy Ghost, and he was playing at the Roscoe Theater, and I was Kiss Me Kate at the Schubert Theater.
Right. Right.
And we started seeing each other, and we were called the Romance of Schubert Alley.
Ah.
And he wore me down 6 months. We were married. I had to break off with my other beau, which broke my heart. I really loved my... You can love two men at the same
You can?
time. Yes.
Was he an actor?
No,
He wasn't.
no.
But Robert Sterling got Anne
Well,
Jeffries' heart.
he said, don't make any plans. He was taking over, and he did.
Cole Porter. Tell me. Love Cole Porter.
Oh, yes.
One of my favorites.
What a lovely gentleman.
Tell me about Cole Porter, because you did one of my best, one of my favorite shows, Kiss Me Kate. It's a great show.
Cole came to me. I was at the Greek Theater doing either Bittersweet or Merry Widow.
Merry Widow.
Because I did
You
several
did
there.
3 of them there.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
And he came backstage and he said, Anne, I have written a musical version of The Taming of the Shrew with you in mind. I hope you'll be able to do it. And I said, when are you going into production? He said, in about 2 months. And I was already tied up and committed to Mr. J.J. Schubert to do my romance. And I said, oh gosh, it sounds marvelous, and I love Taming the Shrew. And a musical version, wonderful. But I said, I'm committed, I'm really contractually bound by this thing. And he said, I'll buy the contract out. And I said, no, Mr. Schubert is very old, and this will probably be the last production he will ever be involved with. And he's been good to me, and I said, I'm really obligated morally to do this play. And I love the play, too.
Right.
And so that was where he said, oh, gosh, he said, well, if you have anybody in mind, I said, test my understudy of a girl named Frances McCann, a redhead,
Right.
fiery girl. I said, test her. She would probably be wonderful. He said, I've also been thinking about my dear, lovely Pat Morrison. And I said, oh, give it to Pat. She needs the break, and she's wonderful, and she's lovely. So he took Pat, and the rest is history. My show closed in 6 months. And he came to me again and asked me would I like to do the national company.
You went to Washington, and
No, I
didn't
didn't
you go to
play Washington. No, we opened here in Los Angeles.
In Los Angeles.
For the LA Civic Light Opera. And we played San Francisco, and then I spent a year in Chicago.
Uh-huh.
And then he came to me again and said, would I like to either go to London with the show or take over the New York show? Well, Pat wanted to go to London, and I wanted to stay closer to my California boyfriend.
Right.
You know, he could fly to New York, but flying to London for weekends was a little rough. So the rest is history. I stayed in, 2 years of my life was spent in that show.
Cole Porter, is there anything back in your mind about him that's really you can share with me right now? Something very
Well,
special.
Yes.
He was a special human being.
Yes, he was. He was a very warm, understanding person. I had a little problem when I first went into the New York show with the conductor. The conductor did not want to do my tempos. He wanted to do his tempos. And I'd already been doing the show for a year.
Yeah.
And I have a metronome in my head. You know,
Yes,
once
of
it's
course.
set, that's it.
Yes.
And he would want to go faster here and slower there. And he really said, you do it my way or else. And I said, wait a minute. And I went to the phone, I called Cole. I said, Cole, I'm having a little bit of a problem with the conductor on tempos. And he said, my dear, your tempos are wonderful. You tell him, I will speak to him. Whatever tempos you're doing them at are perfect. And he just ironed the whole, he didn't get excited, he didn't get upset.
He never get excited. did he?
No, I never saw him. I just saw him as a sweet, warm, wonderful man.
Isn't that
I
interesting?
adored him. So did Pat.
He was very, very well.
Anybody that worked for him loved him. You know, he had that command of warmth, loving, and authority at the same time.
Ann Jeffries seems very happy today.
Oh, I am,
You
yes.
have, how many children does Ann Jeffries
I have 3 grown sons, and I have 3 grandchildren. I have a wonderful husband.
Robert Sterling.
We've been married, it'll be 39 years in November.
39.
Yes.
Oh, God, Jan,
And
congratulations.
see, I thought it wouldn't work. Mother knew. Mother knew.
What's Ann Jeffries' secret? You look so beautiful.
Oh, aren't you?
You are
dear?
just the lady of this town.
Thank
Absolutely
you.
elegant and just beautiful. What is your secret, Miss Jeffries? What time does Ann Jeffries get up of the day? Or I know
If I
you're
have my choice?
busy. Yes,
When I'm not working, I get up around 11 o'clock.
my time.
And also, I'm a nocturnal person. I go to sleep about average of 3 or 4 in the morning, never before 3.
Really?
Even if I have to get up before the work. I just finished a film called Clifford, which was great fun. I had to get up at 4 in the morning, so, you know, 1 hour sleep the first night was all I got. But I seem to be able to run on very little sleep.
Really?
Yes.
Clifford, tell me about this movie you just did.
Oh, I had such a good time.
Who's in it?
Charles Grodin and Martin Short
Oh, I
and
love
Mary
Martin Short.
Steenburgen. I haven't done a movie since 1968.
Really?
And I had forgotten how much time they take and how many takes they take. Of course, in General Hospital,
Right,
you
right.
shoot it before you learn it,
Right,
practically.
right.
And it was such a luxury for me, and they were such wonderful people. Charles Grodin is a very lovely gentleman, and he's playing the very subdued role. And of course, Martin Short is wild.
Adorable, isn't he adorable?
He's one of the funniest people I've
Yeah.
ever been around
Yeah.
in my life.
Yeah.
And Mary Steenburgen is so sweet and so dear. And the director was wonderful, Paul Flaherty, and the cameraman, John, oh, God.
Mary is an excellent actress.
Yes, she is.
She really is underrated right now.
Yeah, oh, I don't think so. She
no,
won. She's
She's
won
won
an
awards. I think
Academy and an
she's
Emmy.
a
And,
wonderful actress, wonderful actress. And Martin Short, I adore him.
oh, he
I
is
think he's
so
great,
dear.
yeah.
He's playing a 10-year-old boy in this.
Yeah, he is.
A demon monster of a child.
Yeah.
And he's just as wild and wonderful.
What is your husband doing now, Mr. Sterling? What is Robert Sterling doing
At
this
the moment, he's
Yeah.
in Las Vegas playing golf.
Is he?
Yes. He's
He
still an
keeps-
avid golf player.
Uh-huh.
He's beginning to do some commercials now, which
Yes.
I'm very pleased with. He retired completely from the business for about 15 years
Uh-huh.
and was manufacturing custom-made golf clubs.
I see.
And that became a little more than we could handle. So he was,
General Hospital.
Yeah.
Ann Jeffries. Ann Jeffries don't need General Hospital, but General Hospital wanted Ann Jeffries. Tell me about that.
well, Marvin Page called me. Robert was in the hospital having a back operation. And Marvin couldn't reach me. He traced me down to the hospital room where I was sitting with
Did he
Robert
really?
and presented General Hospital to me. And I said, oh, no, I don't really want to do a soap opera. And I had done one a few years before, and it had not been a pleasant experience for me, a thing called Bright Promise, with many of the people that were then in General Hospital when I
Yes,
went in
yes.
with it. And he said, look, he said, just all you have to do is like 10 performances at the most, just a small part on it. I mean, in time. And he said, I said, no, 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 I don't think so. And he said, look, it was good enough for Elizabeth Taylor, it was good enough for Milton Berle and Sammy Davis. They
Right.
all did these small parts, or
Right.
cameo parts, or whatever you want to call them. And he said, but isn't good enough for you? And I said, oh, Marvin, if you'll just get off my back, I'll do it. Let me get Robert out of the hospital. And so I went on for 10 shows, and here it is 6 years later, and
And you're still on 'em.
I'm still going in and out of General Hospital.
Is Aunt Jeffries enjoying it?
Yes,
You do?
yes, I love working.
You do love work.
I love work. I think that's one thing that keeps me young, keeps me. I never stop. I work, 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 and I don't say no. Very, very seldom do I say no to a role. If it's something challenging, and not what I think is the real me or what I would like to do, I'll take it as a challenge.
You and John F. Kennedy have something very much in common. Camelot.
Oh yes,
It's your favorite,
yes.
and his favorite.
I had the honor of doing it at the National Theater in
Right.
Washington shortly after John F. Kennedy was assassinated. And one afternoon, the matinee, I came running into the theater, and some man stopped me and did a check thing on me before I came. I thought, why have they got the FBI here? And they said, well, there's some very special people in the audience today. And so everybody had to be checked, you know, with everything, the
Yes.
detectives. And of course, it leaked out that the Kennedys were coming to the show. So the whole family and the FBI took up the first 3 rows in the center. And Ethel and Bobby and the children and all were there. And to look out, I cry when I think about it, to look out and see them with the tears streaming down their face. Because it was his favorite show.
Yeah.
Yes, it was very difficult on the cast.
And it's your favorite, too, isn't
Oh,
it?
I love it. I love
You enjoy doing the show.
that and The King and I.
I see tears in your eyes, Aunt
Yes,
Jeffries.
well, it was a very emotional evening for
Seems
us.
like you're very spiritual.
Thank you.
You are spiritual.
Yes, yes. At ESB and all those things,
You've
all
had some-
inherited from my mother.
So you've had some good times in your life. Looking back, would you do it the same way?
Yes, yes. By all means, I would have the same mother to guide me through it, too.
Your mother.
Yes. Very, very special, special lady. If I could write, and people have talked to me about writing a book of my various experiences and write a book about Mother. She was a very, very unusual woman.
What would Aunt Jeffries call the book? Because you mentioned your mother, she's so much responsible for Aunt Jeffries' career and
Yes.
life. And
Yes.
what would you call the book? Would you have a title?
I would like to call it Kiss Me Kate. Her name
Kiss-
was Kate.
Ah,
But of course,
and that's one of your other favorite shows.
Yes, I loved Kate.
Yeah, yeah.
2 years of my life, and Mother right there guiding me. But she wasn't a backstage mother.
She wasn't?
You know, you never saw her backstage. She never interfered. She guided me.
Uh-huh.
She would come back and sit in the house and listen to the show. And some nights I'd say, she escorted me home every evening when we were in New York.
She did.
And she would say, I'd say, gee, I felt so good tonight. I really gave a terrific show. I gave my all tonight. And she'd say to me, well, yes, you did give a good show, but it was not as good as last night's. And I'd say, why? I felt so good, you know? And she said, you were more in control last night
She
when
could
you were
tell.
cautious. Oh, yes,
Isn't that amazing?
yes.
Felt like she
She
was
had a PhD. Mother was an egghead, really. And she could sing and she could act, and she was beautiful. But we came from an old Southern family that didn't approve of a young lady going on the stage. That's why when she found out I could sing at like a year and a half, she said, that's my singer. And she trained me and guided me from then on.
Topper. I want to go back to Topper because it's Anne Jeffries. Topper is one of the best series ever been on television. Everybody loves Topper.
And so many people say,
And
why
Robert
don't they
Sterling.
see it anymore?
Yes, why? Why don't we?
Well, they were done on film. We did 79 of them, and King World Syndicates own them now.
Right.
Michael King is a very wonderful man, and he said that they show them in syndication around the country a little bit, but he said that they need a lot of work on them, and for some reason or other, they haven't done it. They are shown, but I've never seen them in L.A. except one 4th of July. They had a marathon of the Topper films.
I see. Any of your children in the business?
No. No, Robert didn't want them to be. I had 3 sons.
Really?
And he says it's no profession for a man.
Was Robert does he have any regrets about the business? Robert Sterling?
Well, you know, Robert's a very strange, shy, inward type of person. He's a Scorpio, and I'm an Aquarian.
Okay.
As my dear friend Carol Wright used to say, we were the
I
only
loved
two
him.
possible. I was an Aquarian was the
Uh-huh.
only one that could get along with a Scorpion, really.
Uh-huh.
But yes, I loved him too. I
Carol
miss him
Ryder.
very much.
Charming.
Miss him very
He used to
much.
call me, I was a Gemini, and he says, I don't know which one I'm talking to. He's so wonderful. I love him
Yeah.
so.
But we worked very happily on the Topper series together.
You were very happy to
Yes,
join
we
it
worked,
together.
we worked together so well.
Uh-huh.
You know, it was really a marriage made in heaven, working together. And then when Robert decided he didn't want to work that much anymore, and then he had an agent that said, you shouldn't work together as a team all the time.
Uh-huh.
He said it to Robert, not to
Yes,
me. He was
yes.
Robert's agent, not mine.
Yes.
And he wanted to split us up and get Robert working alone. And Robert did a series called Ichabod and Me, and he was very unhappy with it.
Uh-huh.
And he said, I'm getting out of the business. I've had it. I don't want to do
That's
this
it.
anymore.
Uh-huh.
And I always thought it was strange because it was his choice to become an actor.
Uh-huh.
I liked acting, but I didn't like singing really as much.
Uh-huh.
So I always considered myself a singing actor.
Actor. But Anne Jeffries gave up singing for a while, and then you returned back to singing.
Yes.
Tell me about that, Anne.
Well, about 4 years, I decided that the voice was tired and that I didn't want to sing anymore.
Why?
Well, as I said, I really wanted to be an actress. And the singing always seemed to be getting in the way.
Such a great voice.
Oh, thank you. But I had done about 38 different musical shows
Mm-hmm.
and sung an awful lot, and I just decided to rest the voice for a few years. And just about a year and a half ago, I started it up again. I cranked it up and started vocalizing.
And where did you
doing-
start? You were performing? Did you perform somewhere?
Actually, yes, at the University of Alabama. A friend of mine down there called me and said they needed a singer for a show they were doing,
Right.
performance, and would I do it? And I said, oh no, I don't sing anymore, and I haven't a nightclub act anymore. And he said, oh, I need you so badly. And I tried to get Carol Lawrence to do it,
Uh-huh.
but her manager said no, she was booked. And out of desperation for this friend of mine, I said, yes. I have 6 weeks. Huh. So for 6 weeks, I vocalized every day. I got music organized. I got my orchestration done. And I went and did it and had a wonderful time. And the audience was marvelous. And it was just sort of a musical review of musical shows, mostly
Yes.
that I had been in, except
Yes.
I did sing the song from Phantom of the Opera, which I wasn't in, and Cats, which I wasn't in.
Right.
But it was very successful, so I decided to keep it going.
Anne Jeffries, every time I go out to the Hilton or any of their parts,
There I am.
Robert Sterling is not there inside. You're with Butch, who is Caesar
Caesar
Romero.
Romero, my dear,
Tell
dear
me,
friend.
why is your husband home and you're out with Caesar?
Because he's very shy. He hates large crowds of people.